People of African Descent New Thought Group proudly present Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change. Our partner, New Thought Media Network, is offering this interview series to highlight some of the luminaries who will present at this amazing event. For more information, go to PADNTG.com. Stay tuned for a wonderful interview. Peace and blessings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion for Celebrating Our Soul 2024. I'm so excited about this group of luminaries that we have with us tonight to talk about the content and the expectations and just the sheer joy of being together as New Thought practitioners from an African diaspora. And first and foremost, right off the bat, as you're watching this, I want to remind you, you just heard it, but I want to tell you again, August 1st through the 4th, you need to be at Unity Village. And if you can't be there, there's a virtual option as well, which you'll find out more as we continue. And without any further ado, hello, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Great. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Well, excellent. Excellent. And so I'm going to just go around the room, and I guess it's probably best because who knows how the video stream is set up. I'll call some names, and everybody can introduce themselves and give us their background, and then from there we'll get busy. So first, we'll start with you, Reverend Celeste. Go ahead and introduce yourself as if you don't already have the audience, but go right ahead and get it done.
Hey there, I'm Reverend Celeste Frazier, producer of Celebrating Our Soul 2024, Consciously Creating Change.
Excellent. Esther, will you go next?
Absolutely. Greetings, everyone. My name is Esther Nicholson, and I have been an Agape International licensed practitioner for almost 27 years. I am a woman in long-term recovery for 37 years. And I am the founder and CEO of a program called Soul Recovery. And Soul Recovery bridges the gap between the fundamental spiritual principles of the 12 steps of recovery and metaphysical principles, ancient wisdom, including some of the latest developments in brain science, which provides individuals, communities, groups, organizations with a clear and comprehensive roadmap back to their authentic self, the self that we were created to be in the image and likeness of God before it was numbed out and dumbed out by unhealed trauma and indoctrinated beliefs, intergenerational trauma, cultural trauma, individual trauma, which creates that sense of separation. So soul recovery is the recovery, rediscovery, and reawakening to our souls, that perfect aspect of ourselves that has never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. Thank you.
Amen. Next, Isha, will you go jump in?
Yes, my name is Aisha Mason. I am a practitioner, master practitioner, licensed with Agape International Spiritual Center. I've been a practitioner for 35 or so years. In addition to being an instructor at the Agape University, my passion for as long as I've been a practitioner has been to integrate my passion for this teaching, spirituality, our spiritual principles and practices with peacemaking, justice making, building beloved community in the world. I think for my spiritual life to be meaningful, to be relevant, I have to apply what I know to building, creating, the evolution of the planet. So most of my work over 30-some years has been focused on that.
Outstanding. And last but not least, Liza, will you jump in and give everybody your preview, if you will?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. My name is Dr. Liza Swidarski. I am a licensed practitioner, licensed through the Centers for Spiritual Living. But what I realized is I've been a practitioner since the age of 5. And my I think the first identity people see is I'm also a gynecologist. I've been practicing as a medical doctor. Um, gosh, for 25 years, I got my medical degree, been practicing gynecology for over 22 years, and have been fortunate to have these intimate spaces in the lives of women where you get to see how conscious thinking and environmental energy really do impact the physical body. So I think when I found religious science and science of mind almost 20 years ago, it was like a homecoming, especially the very first sentence in Science of Mind, that we all look forward to the day where science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the visible to the invisible. And I feel like this is what I've done. I've also had my own self-healing journey in medical school, diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune disease. It's been in remission for 26 years using these principles. And the principles are life-changing. I'm also the founder and CEO of Health Vows, and I've created a Health Vows program. So how I like to show up in the world in my conventional space, bridging the metaphysics with the allopathic Western medicine, is I run a 7-part workshop series that honors that change and health and the choice to be healthy begin in the mind. So we go through a series of each workshop honoring the body and really looking at our entire diet. What is in our environment that is directly impacting our bodies? Because I've had a personal experience, but then an up close and personal seat with each woman I've had the privilege to serve.
Wow. Boy, I can already let everybody know that this is about to be a powerful, impactful hours spent here together. And the first thing that popped into my mind as I listened to everybody give their backgrounds and their areas of focus is that, you know, the theme for this year's conference is cultivating change, consciously cultivating change. And when I listen to all the different approaches that everyone has presented here, and just to let everyone know, we have master teachers here who are going to be doing classes, and some are going to be doing keynote speakers. The one thing I want to ask, I was involved last year, and it was an amazing event. I think all of us were there, and I just want to, if everyone or someone can speak to the idea of the conscious cultivation that has taken place from last year to this year, that has expanded what we're doing, that has increased the audience, that has made things, I believe, you know, bigger and better. And I'd just like to hear your input on that if you can.
Okay, LZ is consciously creating change.
Yeah, consciously creating change.
Yes, and it's not cultivating. So I want to just make that clear.
Yeah.
Because it was quite a process for us to come up with the name of this particular conference. And, you know, it was, how do we describe that we want social justice to be very much a part of this conversation, but we also want to be able to nourish and nurture our people in every aspect of their lives. So physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Because the presumption is, for the most part, and definitely with regard to the presenters, is that these are people who are steeped in spiritual practice. And being steeped in spiritual practice, we are relying upon our relationship with our inner guide, our spirit, to lead us out of the conditions that seem to be so dense on the other planes, like physically, like emotionally. And so what we're coming into seeing is, how can we not only talk about but be proactive about addressing the concerns, particularly of people of African descent. Now, we're all from Africa. I just saw a thing on social media that showed Black people in Japan from antiquity, but we're all talking about people who identify as Black, as African, and not as Europeans or from some other continent.
And so because we have a culture here, particularly in the United States, and not all of our presenters are from the United States, but because we are centered here in the United States, we're looking to also see what's happening with our relationship with God, our relationship with our partner, our family, our work, every way that we navigate through this thing called life. What is the relationship there, and how can we improve, build upon the existing relationships and create new relationships that's going to serve our vision, our purpose, and our expansion. And then last but not least, you have not last, but we have sacred activism, which I did mention, and that's really approaching some of the societal challenges, opportunities for revelation and revolution, and meaning revolution in a way that means change, and also being able to do it from spirit, from a very centered place where we are absolutely not trying to coerce or dictate or in any way impose a will upon anyone else, but to meet them at the level of their spirit so that we can really revolutionize our lives together in such a way where we can diminish or eliminate some of our pains and ills of our society. And our last approach is on Sunday, which is prosperity. And really all of this has really been talking about prosperity,
Right.
but it's really from the place of, not just how much money can we accumulate, but how can we live our best lives? How can we feel the joy in every aspect of our lives, and to be able to grow and really feel like we're moving in the direction of our highest self, and that we're blessing others in the process. So that's
Outstanding.
what about 2024. 2022, we were going through our history, right? We started in Africa, we moved into the Renaissance period, we moved into the civil rights period, and then we came into the present day. So now we're staying in present day, but we're also participating in what the future can unfold based on what we're doing today.
So, one thing I get from that, and then I like a couple of other presenters to step in here. One thing that was clear to me in that explanation is that when we look at a holistic approach to life, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and we look at the statement that Dr. Liza said up front, that Ernest said, we're looking to move from the visible, physical, or visible to the invisible, where science and spirituality comes together. Esther, you were talking about brain activity and the whole idea of recovery and creating a new environment and in creating a new person, in essence. In terms of the work that's being presented at the conference, what's your touchstone statement or presentation that would speak to that?
Well, consciously creating change is our theme. Changing into what? And so my work is about changing back into that which we were originally created to be in the first place. So the Greek word for trauma is wound. And looking at this from a cultural, from a Black woman's perspective, or being an African American, or just in the world, Black people, people of color in the world, that we are unconsciously holding on to our intergenerational and ancestral wound, which creates that sense of separation, so that as we're, when we're doing our prayer work, when we're doing our spiritual practice, and we're still finding that there's somewhat of a disconnection, or after we pray, or after we do a prayer treatment, we see our thinking seems to automatically default back to our familiar way of being, which then neutralizes this wonderful prayer that we've just done, which creates frustration and discouragement and a sense of hopelessness, and people don't understand why. And that is because Jesus the Christ said, it is done unto you as you believe, not as you want to believe, not as you want to think that you believe, but as you really, 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 really believe. So some of the brain science work that I'm involved in, which is called the emotional freedom technique, where we use tapping to get deep into the unconscious mind, to bring into your conscious awareness what you are not aware of, because of course you can't acknowledge what you're not aware of, and you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. And I think it was Sigmund Freud that said that 10% of the iceberg is above sea level, and 90% is below sea level. So if we're holding on to all of these wounds, which are perceptions of the trauma, like the trauma happened and the trauma is happening, but it's an event that is isolated, right? And the event is over, but the perceptions that we take on about ourselves as a result of the trauma becomes our belief, becomes a way of being, becomes our personal law. And so even when I look at, and I haven't said this publicly before, but it's it's like when the truth is revealed to me, it's like you got to share it. When we look at police crime on our Black men, right? Mm-hmm. If the law of attraction works anywhere, it works everywhere. Is that true?
Yes.
If the law works anywhere, it works everywhere. So if we have a Black man driving down the street or wherever he is, and he is unconsciously holding on to the ancestral and intergenerational trauma of slavery and being afraid of the white master, because he should have been, right? But that has not been healed deep in his unconscious mind and even in his cells. What energy is he putting out? What frequency is he vibrating at when he sees a white police officer? And when a white police officer has not healed his intergenerational trauma and indoctrinated beliefs, paradigms, legacies, and loyalties, even if he's not consciously thinking, I'm going to kill this Black man, what is happening for him on a vibrational level? So then you have two people coming together with their unhealed stuff, with their personal laws, that creates the perfect condition for this to happen. So absolutely, we need to change policy. We need police reform and all of that stuff. But if we don't heal the cause, we can't heal the effect.
Perfect. So, Aisha, I'd like to bring you in here as a master practitioner, with in terms of a holistic approach from your perspective. As we look at the different things that are going to be happening at the conference, what would be one of the biggest misconceptions you think people have about this idea of integrating spirit and social activism and culturally creating and consciously creating a space that can hold all that tension and work with it, if that makes sense?
I think so. I would say two things. One is that there is some kind of separation between, just give me a moment. There's some kind of separation between address our awareness and our participation in the conditions around us and our spiritual life. Yes. Like there could be two separate lives. There are not. Our outer lives, individually and collectively, are a reflection, a projection, a magnification of our values, of our spiritual values and what we believe in. So we can't have this life and that life. Right. It can't be. That's number one. Number two, and I would say this is particularly for it's appropriate for this conference, which is for Black people. We live in a society that has prioritized the individual over the community. And really our roots are in community, not to the expense of the individual, but always within the context of community. So we cannot talk about our individual spiritual enlightenment, our individual spiritual growth, if we're not talking about the growth, the unfoldment, the health, the well-being, the evolution of the community of which we are a part. Because if we're talking about God, then we have to define what is God. And that could be a long conversation. But the essence of it is that God is love.
Yeah.
So love cannot turn its back where there is suffering. Love cannot just think about me and not think about those around me, connected to me. And everyone is connected to me because we're just one. So I think those are 2 points of entry to the conversation: individualism versus thinking about ourselves as part of community, part of a whole. And the second, in short, is what would love do? That is what the practice of these values, the practice of these principles comes down to. Does love just stand by and watch and say, "Oh, how did your consciousness create that?" Or is love generous? Does love stop by the story of the Good Samaritan, see the guy who's been beaten up and robbed on the side of the road? Does love stop and help him?
Yeah.
Does love understand that my welfare depends on your welfare and your welfare depends on mine? So I'm going to stop there.
Perfect. And that's great, because that gives me a great lead into Dr. Liza in terms of, I think each one of you before her has given this this internal and external expose, if you will, of what goes on in life, period, and definitely what goes on in the African American diaspora community. So I'd like to ask you, Doc, in terms of from a physical side of the medicine, if you will, and the mental side of the medicine, if you will, how do we begin to share with our communities and in a lot of cases share with ourselves or remind ourselves of this interchange of energy, this interchange of ideas to help foster the very thing that we are looking to do, is create conscious change so that we help everything and everybody in the environment, if that makes sense.
So can I just insert something while I microphone? And I just want to clarify something that Aisha said, and that is that the conference is for Black people. And I just want to be clear that it's for everybody, but it's by people of African descent or by Black people, because we're not going to do what they discriminate and say that certain people can't come. It's by people of African descent, and that, it's for everyone.
Without a doubt, because we're all one people. We understand that there's oneness in the universe. It showed up a little different in some packages, but at the essence, that love that Aisha was talking about permeates the space. So Doc, I'll give it back to you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so your question about, how do we begin to share and interchange this energy? It's just such a manifestation how we're one mind that I received this question, because when I think of this conference, the first thing that comes to me is there is power and love with conscious gathering of Black folks. When Black people gather, there is this power, and there's also a collective power with Black brilliance when we gather. And the energy alone, when we're consciously gathering to celebrate our souls, this is what I thought was so beautiful about the conference when I first learned about it for the inaugural conference, is how much that is needed. So I love how Reverend Celeste says we're not going to exclude anyone. But there's a big part of me that was like, amen. We have a New Thought conference that intentionally has been created by people of color, by Black people, with the aim and the goal and the focus to gather us together, because there's so much brilliance. And I think what I experienced in the first conference was this gathering of like minds. I call it the soul tribe, which I had actually been masterminding, doing my spiritual mind treatments for, because I had a limited belief once that it's hard to make new friends. And that's one of the things I talk about in my workshop coming up, is the power of friendships and community on health. But it starts consciously. So wanting to attract our soul tribe and be with other like-minded practitioners, because many of us are navigating in this world as an N of one or two in our spaces. And there is a Esther was saying, there's like trauma in that sometimes in what we experience. You know, there was a Black women's health study, part of Boston University, that showed that Black women who've experienced instances of racism in the workplace with police officers or when pursuing housing were 26% more likely to have heart disease. And we know our heart is our feeling intuitive center, right? So I, as a MD scientist and a practitioner who first has a deep love for God, I see how this all interplays on a day-to-day basis. And I certainly know I've experienced all those things and still do on a pretty regular basis, especially in the area of employment. And when I came to Celebrating Our Soul, I felt like I had just such healing energy, because as we were talking about, you can leave a space like that and be inspired when we're gathering consciously, thinking about change. So even the topics of the conference, sacred activism, prosperity, talking about health. I can't tell you the number of New Thought conferences I've attended where we don't talk about health. We don't talk about the spiritual temple, the body that is harboring the spirit. So I'm just very excited. And I think that the conference itself is an energy exchange. The goal is for us to gather, get our soul food, meaning our spiritual food, recommit go back to the basics, which is what I hear the masterminds, the practitioners, the ministers on this panel talking about, that we just sit and we eat and we talk about spiritual principles so that we're fueled up to go and to show up as spirit and form in a stronger way, more in alignment with divine mind, that whatever has happened to us has not touched our essence. Because I do believe, and I'll wrap up with this comment, that individuals, we hold on to our trauma stories because of the energy. Like I always say, energy isn't created or destroyed. So when we rethink back to those moments where we've experienced trauma, it's about how do we consciously navigate the energy associated with that memory that keeps showing up. And that's where spiritual practice comes into play, and prayer, and meeting with like-minded spirits who are intentionally meeting, honoring love, and celebrating Blackness. You know, I think we spend so much time in the world too measuring Blackness on an individual level and, you know, in a cultural level. So this is a conference where we get to just show up as is, you know, and that energy is powerful.
Go ahead, jump right in there real quick.
That not only at our conferences or our spiritual centers do we not talk about health, Liza, physical health, we don't talk about mental health,
right?
Which is a huge thing in this world that people are suffering from. And to just respond to you, Aisha, my beloved friend I've known for almost 40 years, absolutely, it's not just about individuals, it's about the community. But you can't give what you don't have. You can't give it. You know, there are people that are suffering from mental health issues to the degree that they can barely get out of bed in the morning, let alone think about the sacred community. So, you know, in our community as being Black people, and, you know, me being raised a Baptist, it's like we don't talk about mental health issues. And in New Thought, we don't talk about mental health issues. It's like, let's just pray it away. But here's the thing. You can pray and have all the education and the intellectual understanding about the universe and all of that. But if there's a place where you are not self-compassionate about, you know, like now we're not asking people what happened to you, or, you know, I'm sorry, you know, like what's wrong with you, like why are you acting that way. We're asking from a compassionate place, what happened to you? And we understand that what happened to you is not your identity. It's not where you want to pull over and park, but it is a place within us that we must compassionately acknowledge so that we can start to heal it, so that it can clear away the fog, part the veil, so that we can make that direct connection to the divine, so that when we speak, the earth melteth. You know, it's very important for us to acknowledge and speak on that. I believe at the conference for conscious to make conscious change, we have to first become aware of what has been keeping us stuck, you know.
And you know, that's a great segue, and I'm going to put this out there, and then I'm going to, you know, everybody come around and give their elevator speech on this, if you will. In that, one thing that came up in there, and I want to make sure that it's in the room, is that we'll have our young people there, we'll have our youth there, and so everything that we're talking about here has to incorporate and expand into an intergenerational kind of presentation and understanding and availability. So in that vein, what do you think, or how would you describe that we participate in this dialogue so that it is intergenerational? And I'm, you know, most of us grew up probably, you know, when the adults were speaking, they said, this is grown folk talk, y'all get out the room or whatever. But right now we need everybody in the room because we got different ideas and the young people are dealing with a different time. So if you guys could speak to that, I would love to entertain that in the space. Go ahead, Celeste.
I'm just going to happening this year is that you're actually seeing young people in the space. Like you'll see a young person giving a prayer or a young person giving a poem in between the different keynote speeches or at the beginning of a particular section of the program. You know, before we were kind of isolated like that's youth church and over here is for the adults. So there's no children's table that is the kind of overarching thing. They do have their program, but we are integrating more, and of course we integrate on the final day as well to bring everyone together. And you know, for anybody like Liza who's bringing their kids with them, you know, I imagine what people do when they come home from school and from work. You know, well, how was your day? There's that, but I just wanted to presence into the room that we are not isolating so much as we are including, and I'll leave it there.
Perfect. And I think that's perfect for the question in terms of how do we create this intergenerational knowledge and transfer and presence in the work that needs to be done. Go ahead, Esther.
And also to be relatable, to be relatable to the young people.
Yes.
You know, to talk about the things that happen, you know, in your youth, the peer pressure, maybe the bullying. You know, I got pregnant at 16 years old. The fear, it's like all of that stuff. It's like talk to them as if like you know them because you were once them, you know. And God, if someone would have told me about God, about my true identity, when I was that 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl who was being bullied and, you know, who would have jumped off a building just to belong, if that meant that you would think I was cool and you thought I belonged, you know, to bring this into our spiritual communities, you know, independent of our youth churches. But, you know, if they're going to be in there listening to like, in a way that they understand, it's like, oh my God, someone actually hears me and sees me, and they're not just telling me to pray. They're saying they're telling my story. So anyway, I know I have a big mouth. I'm sorry.
That's right. Go ahead. Anyone else? Jump in, Doc. Go ahead. Jump in.
I'm very excited. I'm bringing my teenagers. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, and I think what I've also often tried to do is I was a very conscious kid, and the small. I always talk about my little Liza, who's really guided me because my mother, she talked about God. She praised God with microphones in the living room, singing "How Great Thou Art," and just that was the gift she gave me, despite any childhood challenges. So one of the things I realized also when I became a practitioner, and you do that coursework, is those limited beliefs you develop in childhood, looking at your parents, what you received and what you didn't receive, and how you're still holding on to that. So one of the pacts I made with myself first, besides that we're getting to the conference, is that, you know, living the life design and in spiritual integrity. And so we talk about these principles at home. I put poems by New Thought authors in my house. There are angels. There's a prayer room. And with my teenagers, it's sometimes hard to get teenagers. I don't have that same style of we're going to church and there's no questions asked. I've been a little bit different with that, although I did send them to faith-based schools. And what excites me about this space is they've been seeing how we practice the principles. We talk about intuition, about your conscious thinking. How are you showing up in spaces? Prayer. We talk about centering work and how to center yourself, rooted in the divine before you perform. I have 2 kids that are artists. And so what'll be beautiful is they'll see all of these other beautiful Black individuals talking about the same philosophy, because they've been in, Boston is different from the West Coast. Although many of our New Thought philosophers began here, and we have, and if anyone wants, come visit me, we have, all the Christian Scientists, we have all of the history here. And my children have been to these spaces, but, sometimes I think for them to see hundreds of Black people together celebrating New Thought, it's going to blow them away. I already see them practicing the presence, even when you don't think things stick. I've seen my books by Ernest Holmes go missing, and they're in my daughter's room. I've seen her meditating and prayer. And so the way Reverend Jerry Hobby works, and I've seen her with the youth. I mean, I wanted to go last year and be part of the labyrinth. And she just has such a beautiful presence and such an honoring way she approaches children. I'm excited to have my children be in her energy in person. Also, so I think for me, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Perfect. And Aisha, can you go ahead, Cesna? I want to bring Aisha in here to bring it to the wrap on there.
So what I want to say is that, I fulfilled my competency for youth church to become an ordained minister with Jerry Hobby. So I know works up close, and that's why I pulled her into this conference. Okay, first of all, I've got my producer hat on, no shame. The other thing I want to say that we have 3 Black men who are under 50 who will be presenting at this year's conference. That one will be a keynote speaker, which is Lucien Baker. One will be a master class presenter coming in hybrid, who is Miko Whitlock out of Washington, D.C. And the third will be Fabian, who's coming out of Jamaica. So like I say, not everybody's from the U.S., but we are really being more consciously diverse in creating change. And I'll stop there.
Perfect. All right, so Aisha, we'll let you wrap this section up. We're going to go to a quick commercial after this, and then we'll be right back. So you got the floor. I don't think you're
Thank you,
muted.
Thanks
Okay.
I worked in youth church for probably, 15 or 20 years. And I recall when we would go to camp over the Christmas holiday, from Christmas to New Year's, youth recruiting other youth to go. And they'd say, we're going to talk about real stuff. You can talk about anything. And we're going to cry together. And I just thought that they just need, what they're requesting is space and attention. Give me your full attention. Listen to me. And then give me something I can really use. Right. And I guess last, and just love me up. Just love me up.
Yeah.
And so that's our opportunity to listen to young people, to make space for them to be authentic, that it's okay to have stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then supporting them with here are tools that you can use. How you relate to whatever it is really what matters. As Esther was saying earlier, with love and compassion for self and others, and what tools can you use? So I'm anxious to hear actually what these younger speakers have to say, because we are, as a species, we are evolving. The teaching is evolving, and what is required of us is evolving.
Yes.
So I want to hear that from that fresh space, what's happening, so I can expand and catch up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's perfect. And you gave a great lead in to something. I'm going to pose this question now. We're going to do this quick interlude and come back. And the question is this, however you want to attack it, and that is, how do we begin to integrate tradition and innovation in what we do and how we teach and how we live, given the container that's going to be set as we consciously create change. And so right now we're going to jump to a quick reminder of what's coming up on August 1st through 4th, and then we'll be right back.
Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change is almost here. Can't make it to Kansas City? No need for FOMO, fear of missing out. We have a virtual option for you. Now you will experience all the main sessions, plus a bonus masterclass hybrid option on self-care from Miko Whitlock of Unity of Washington, D.C. You don't want to miss our fabulous music team, including the soulful Bukeka Blakemore, the wonderful choir director and background vocalist Tyrone Cozy, the phenomenal singer, musician, and songwriter Ray Davis, the amazing vocalist Charles Holt, the talented Iya Omiyomi Ibukemi, the powerful singer Michelle Jordan out of Oakland, the fabulous music director and pianist Angela Ward, the great bassist James Ward, the dynamic drummer Jalen Ward, and the awesome saxophonist Billy Von Winston. You don't want to miss this. Your soul will be celebrating you for bringing it to this conference. Sign up for 8 magnificent sessions for only $275. Consciously create change in your life by registering for this powerful conference today. Go to PADNTG.com.
There you have it, everyone. So get your traveling shoes on, if you will, and I'll meet you in that place of unity in Unity Village. So I'll be looking for everyone there. And so as we left, I posed this question about how do we look at tradition, and I'll ask it more formally now. So how do we begin to balance the preservation of our spiritual tradition, especially those that are steeped in the African diaspora tradition, and begin to look at some of the innovative tools? Because when we bring the young people into space, we know we're stepping into the media and God knows what else. They got stuff that I can't even pronounce, and I'm in the technology field. So give me your input on that. Anyone can start. You can go ahead and start, Celeste. I see you got your hand up.
Yes, sir. And for me, it's about diving deeper into tradition. For example, I've been studying with Dr. Will Coleman for, about 20 years. And I got in touch with African spirituality and the through line between what's happening in terms of how successful people, not necessarily of our hue, are using language for their advancement. And that's basing a lot of their understandings about the Greek language, the Hebrew language, the Latin languages, and to know that there are so many secrets that are embedded in the tradition that we've ignored. And so for me, my work is to continue to go back into what is deeper into my history, energetically, spiritually, beyond any ancestor that I could, identify, and bring that to the fore, because that's part of me moving forward. It's like our symbol for celebrating our soul is the Sankofa. And that is because we're looking back in order to move forward. And that is my intention personally.
And and I love that because I know early on in my spiritual journey, I in New York, I had this idea, this opportunity rather, to participate in a First World Alliance organization where I got to see Dr. John Henry Clark, Josephine Yakiman, Renoko Rashidi, Ivan Van Sertima, Francis Cress Welton, Naeem Akbar, all these people that were Wade Nobles out of Atlanta, all of these people who were pivotal in beginning, I think, in our community, some of this African spirituality that really fits well, or New Thought fits well within it. And so I would like to get a little bit from anyone and everyone, if we can, on that whole piece of the marrying of African-centric spirituality and living with the principles of New Thought. And that's going to be on display at the conference. And anybody can just jump in.
Yeah, and it's going to be short. I think that's wonderful to be able to integrate African history, African spirituality with New Thought. And I just keep coming back to, you shall know the truth and the truth will make you free. Regardless to what tradition it's in, regardless to what language it's in, that if it's the truth that is the business of God, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence, then it's going to be a foundation for any evolutionary progress that we make. And I want to offer that we want to be in discernment about tradition, the traditional spiritual foundational principles that are the very nature of God, versus being loyal to our ancestral pain. And I tell people in my classes, we are not betraying or abandoning the ancestors by becoming free and by healing. Our ancestors who have left the density of the third dimensional world are no longer hanging out in slavery. Nor do they want us hanging out in slavery. And so there is a difference between being educated about our past, about our history, and about our spiritual principles, versus unconsciously being attached to the pain, which just keeps us in that. So that's my thing.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point to bring. Yes, Joe, go ahead. I was just going to say that was a good point to bring, and I'll let you continue.
There is a fabulous play called Both And.
Both And.
And in it, it's about her mother's transition and looking at the ancestral pain that has been carried in the lineage. And her realization is, my role is to honor it, not carry it.
Amen.
Honor
Amen.
it, not carry it.
Absolutely.
My liberation liberates generations back and generations forward. Amen. So that is part of the gift that we have to offer our families and our communities, period. The other thing I did want to mention is I just so appreciate that you lifted up our spiritual history and lineage. I want to be open at the top if we're going to incorporate new modalities, new ways of teaching, communicating, working, practicing. I think of Afrofuturism because it captures the power of our imagination. We don't have to worry about that because we have imagination, which is our attunement to, our spiritual intuition.
Yes.
At the same time, when we can go back and recognize the roots, how far back these spiritual principles go. These spiritual principles go back to ancient Egypt or Kemet, whichever you call it. It is inscribed in stone. It did not start in Europe or in America. It doesn't mean this isn't important. I mean, all of it can be recognized, but part of our job is to remember this stuff is BC, 3,000, 4,000 BC. And so when we have the opportunities to lift that up, to lift that up, we realized it's a greater connection with this powerful frequency that is available to us. And I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. Wow.
Amen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Doc.
I just, having experienced this conference the first time, I feel that the conference itself, the way that it's structured, does honor tradition, but helps us to use more of these, as you spoke of, these innovative tools. I don't think you need social media. The goal is to not to be on social media or creating videos in a space like this. I think we're bringing it back to basics, like our ancestors would, and how in African tradition, there's gathering, there's chanting, there's prayer, there's dance. We at this conference, we get together and we break bread in that large space, and then we break out and dance in the middle of our meal time. These are the things I remember about the conference, and all of the beautiful songs that and artists that we get to experience. And it ended with the youth doing a beautiful presentation. So I feel that the conference in itself is doing just what they already did it the first time. I think this is why so many are attracted to come back this time, and it will just keep growing and speaking to the power in gathering versus the way our Western culture is headed for the African American experience, is that maybe this will inspire us to get on planes and fly and meet each other, to be in that spiritual space, as we know there's no space and time between us, but there really is something different about gathering intentionally.
Yeah. You know,
I felt like I was in a room with all of my relatives.
Yeah.
It's like I'd been home. It was like I'd been homesick, and I didn't even know that that's what was.
Yes.
That's what I was calling forth until I got there, and I was like, and I just took this exhale, this big breath, and was like, I'm with my cousins.
Yes. Well, you know, and that's an interesting piece there, because if we start bringing in that whole genealogy piece and really start stretching it, we begin to really see the connection of it all. And I can't even believe where the time has gone. It's like you ladies have filled this space more than can be imagined. And before we leave, we got about 8 minutes left. So I get your best elevator speech and give me like a 2-minute statement on anything else you want to drop in the space that we haven't talked about or alluded to or allowed to just rise up in the ethers as we've gone through this conversation. And Celeste, you on my right, so I'm in left here, so I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about the support that we've gotten from the New Thought community in terms of all the different organizations who are coming in as sponsors from every aspect of New Thought. You know, from Unity World Headquarters and Unity Worldwide Ministries to UFBL, Universal Foundation for Better Living, to individual centers like Unity of Overland Park or like Hillside, and we just have so many wonderful people who are sponsoring this event through their ministries, like we mentioned Reverend Jerry's ministry, and also Meditative Life Ministries, who was a UFPL minister, Shirley, who is guiding us through meditations every day. And we just have some wonderful individual centers like CSL Dallas or CSL Seattle who are taking out ads in the program. So I just want to acknowledge that, you know, there's people that want to have their footprints in this game, because this is something that people who are of a certain consciousness recognize is important, is relevant. In fact, the former CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries used Celebrating Our Soul as an example of how their ministries should be based on the success. And it's been the greatest success of most of the New Thought conferences, at least in the last 10 years. So I want to, yes, toot our horn, but to also say that the outer village, not only our core, but the outer village is also supporting us, because all of us know who are dedicated to oneness that this is important for us to be able to grow in greater ways than we've ever done before.
Thank
All
you.
right, Esther, jump right into space.
So in the second step of recovery, it states, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And how I look at that from a metaphysical perspective is that, first of all, you can't be restored back to something that was never the truth about you in the first place. And that this power that is greater than yourself is the power that is greater than your anxiety, the power that is greater than your pain, the power that is greater than your familiar way of being, yet it is your true and authentic self. And so that is what we are here to do at this conference, is to lift each other up and support our reawakening, our recovery, our rediscovery, and our reconnecting to that which we really are. And when we do that, we are home. And so welcome home. Thank you.
Aisha, fill the space, fill the space.
I'll take a moment to thank Reverend Celeste and her entire team for being the vehicle through which this divine idea can manifest itself. And I have a sense, I had a fabulous time at the last conference. I couldn't wait to sign up again. It is literally soul food. It is so nourishing in this beautiful setting with these beautiful people and these rich conversations. It is renewing and restoring. In addition to that, all of us who show up, whether it's in person or on Zoom, we are part of this field of consciousness. We are weaving something together through these gatherings. I don't know what it's going to become, but I know there is something important happening there, something important happening in this space. And we all have the opportunity to contribute to it, to be a part of whatever this evolutionary gift is supposed to be. So that's another reason I encourage people to participate, and one reason I want to be there.
All right, Doc, you got to come give us that last little bit of medicine in here now.
You know, maybe I'm being a little selfish, but I have to say that, and I also ditto gratitude to Reverend Celeste and the entire board, what the gift that you've given us by just showing up as spirit in the world. It's just powerful. I have to say, in terms of thinking about the New Thought movement and how beautiful these principles are, how they are the truth, and how do we get the principles out into the world in the spaces that we're in. One of the things about this conference is so powerful is that all of us are in the, we're aligned in that moment, and we are inspired by each other. We can see what individuals are doing in their communities. There's so we talk about sacred activism and consciously creating change. If we really want to get serious about a New Thought movement, there has to be an attraction and buy-in from a multi-generational approach. And I think it's conferences like this, when people of different decades can look and say, I want to emulate this person, or this person could be a great mentor. You know, look, Reverend Celeste, I follow her. She has a podcast. She's creating art. It's like, I get inspired, you know, by watching other wise women do their work. And we need that. Like, my practitioner sister and I talk about the power in watching ministers who are in practice just spread their wings into the world. And my children need to see that. We need leaders of every age. So I think it's opportunities like Celebrating Our Soul that will really create the momentum in the movement that we envision. What is the movement? So I think that's a question. How do we move more minds back to the truth? And so this is what the conference means to me also.
Perfect. So I want to just thank everyone. Esther had to slip away here, but I want to thank everyone for being here and bringing forth this energy for the conference. For me, one of the things talked about a little bit last time, but this time I'm going to plant the seed right now, is that we begin to think about creating African American descended think tank on New Thought and the African diaspora. We got enough people with experiences across any bounds and every bounds you want to do. So I'm planting that seed, and I'm so glad to be here, to be a part of this. New Thought Media Network is one of the sponsors as well, and to be able to present this to everybody to see if they don't for some reason get a chance to make it this year, they'll be putting on their calendar for the next one, whenever it is, and okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to get the first opportunity. And so that's the kind of energy we want to create. So I want to thank everyone. There's going to be art. There's going to be, with the music and prayer and song and dance and food and, everything that can feed the whole soul of humanity. So be there August 1st through the 4th, Unity Village. I can't wait to see everybody again. And thank you. Peace and blessings. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Until we meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
This fantastic interview was just an example of the depth and content of those presenting at Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change. Go to PADNTG.com to register. Be there for it.